every rider has stories that they laugh about and ones that they wince about later. So welcome back to Talks and Tales. This week I'm going to do something a little bit different. So this week I want to tell you guys a bit more about me, tell you some kind of funny stories from my motorbike history, some bad decisions that I've made along the way, tell you a little bit about some of the mishaps, some crashes, and then why it's so important to get out there and ride with friends as well. So I think the best place to start is probably some funny stories. I started riding when I was, 16, 17, when I first got a moped. And at the time, I was living in Bradford, but commuting over to Oldham to go to school. And I made a group of friends in Bradford, and some of them were riders as well. And one particular guy, who unfortunately is no longer with us, he's called Cranny. And we used to ride a lot together on mopeds. And we were riding over towards Saddleworth. And we were off to go there to go and have a catch up with some of my other friends that were from that neck of the woods. And my friend Cranny came along with me, and he was following me along the Saddleworth moors. And it was really, I remember this day really, really clearly. It was very, very foggy. Road conditions weren't great. It was wet. But Cranny was always a bit of a Jack the lad, a bit of a joker. And I kept my eye on him in the mirror, just to make sure I didn't lose him. And I remember looking in the mirror thinking, I can see his bike, but I can't see him. I'm thinking, where the bloody hell's he gone? So I quickly turned around to check that this bike wasn't just following me and he'd decided to jump into a field. And I turned around and he stood there with his arms out like this, and he stood on top of the bloody seat. Absolute nut job. But yeah, he always had us cracking up, that lad. He was always the bit of a joker and a bit of a class clown, but my God, he was a proper heart and soul of every ride that I went on with him. You know, heart and soul of every party that we were ever at. He was always the one, yeah, drinking a bit too much, dancing a bit too much, and making a fool of himself. But that's what life's about, isn't it? And then the other one I think comes to my mind is I moved around a lot when I was a teenager, from kind of house to house. And I remember we moved from one house in Bradford to another house, and I was in charge of basically getting my own stuff from my own room to the new house. And I got everything over, kind of apart from my bed that went in a van, but everything else I had to sort out. And I remember thinking, I need to get my TV into my bedroom in my new house. Thinking, how the hell am I going to do this? And some people won't be old enough to realise, but they had like big TVs. They weren't thin like this. They were like big tube TVs. And luckily mine wasn't too big. It was only like a kind of a large box size. And I had a little Peugeot Vivacity scooter, a little 50cc thing. And I worked out that I could place it just on the foot pegs, you know, on the footrest in front of me. And I used my legs to kind of clamp on it to make sure it didn't go anywhere. And I remember riding through Bradford to get to the new house with a TV in between my legs. Why I did that, I don't really know. Or why I was allowed to do that, I have no idea. But yeah, that was a funny moment, was that. It really, really was. And then another one, I didn't generally get involved with the police at all. However, when I first moved over to Bradford, there was a particular road that went between two council estates, and I used to travel on that road quite a bit. And I got pulled over by the police 5 times in 1 year. And I mean, in all fairness, the first time they pulled me over, I didn't actually realise, I was only a kid. I was travelling back from, I was working at a local co-op, and it was like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I was riding home, and blue lights came on, so I pulled over. And cop car said, can you get in the back of the car? Yeah, of course I can. So I got in the back of the car, and he's like, oh, what do you need to be able to ride a motorbike? And I said, an MOT? He said, Yeah, okay, not on about that, I'm okay. A driving license, provisional driving? Yep, no, I'm not on about that. I'm like, insurance? And he's like, no, not on about that. And I was like, I'm really sorry, I don't know what you mean. And he was like, you need to do a CBT. I'm like, what's one of them? And I hadn't realised you need to do a CBT. I had insurance, I had it MOT'd, I had it taxed, and I was just riding around doing what I need to do. Anyway, so quite, in all fair, he kind of let me off. He kind of said, look, ride the bike home, do your CBT, and I don't want to see you riding it again. So I went and did my CBT, didn't ride it until I'd done it. Anyway, so then after that, I don't know whether my bike had been picked up by the police and they were just continually checking, or if it was just particular the area I was in. But I got pulled over 5 times in 1 year. And one particular, the last time I got pulled over, I was going along a road and I was going to turn right into a side street. And at the time, I was wearing a motocross helmet. I don't know why I was wearing a motocross helmet. I think I'd picked it up because at the time I was riding motocross on weekends. And I just must have picked it up. It must have been warm. And I remember I had this motocross helmet on with no goggles. And as I came to a stop to turn right, massive fly went in my eye. I remember just stood there with one eye, or sat there at the junction with one eye open thinking, I can't open my eye here. Trying to make sure that there was no cars. Didn't realise there was a police car behind me. And I thought, look, I need to get somewhere safe. There was no one on the pavement. There was no cars coming, so I just moved over and stood on the pavement, put the side stand down, and then proceeded to try and pull this this massive fly out my eye. And next thing I got a tap on the shoulder, and a copper was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm really sorry. Can you just give me 1 minute?" He's like, "No, get your bike off the pavement and on the road." I'm like, "Look, I'm really sorry. Can you just give me a minute?" And he's like, "No, get the bike off the pavement." And I went, "Look." And I then pulled this massive blue bottle out of my eye. I'm like, this is why I'm trying to say to you, give me a minute. So I pulled it out and put it on the floor. And then I got back in the police car. And he was like, look, I understand why you did it, but, I said, look, I don't understand. This is now the 5th time I've been pulled over in 1 year. You've done all the checks. You know I've got all the documents in place. Why do you keep pulling me over? And he was just like, routine checks. And I was like, I said, this is getting beyond a joke, this. And in all fairness to him, I didn't get pulled over then after that. So yeah, always wear a helmet with a visor or motocross with goggles, because trying to pull a blue bottle fly out your eye isn't very pleasant. So I think I've got loads of stories like that, in all fairness, because I've been riding now, how long have I been riding? Over 20 years. I've been riding over 20 years. Oh God, I feel old. But yeah, 20 years I've been riding. And I've got so many stories like that, and I'll try not to bore you all to death with them, but I think as a community and as a biking group, we tend to find ourselves in funny situations like that. Even if we're out riding with friends, or we're just solo riding, or even just meeting up at a cafe for a bacon butty and a coffee, you always end up having a chat, and there's always really interesting stories to be heard. But yeah, so yeah, I'm going to go over a few little bad decisions, mistakes, bad mistakes, bad decisions, I don't know. One that stuck out to me is that I broke my hand riding. And initially, I didn't realise I actually had broken my hand. I was travelling back from a girlfriend's at the time, and I think we'd had an argument, or we'd split up. I can't 100% remember. And I was driving through Bradford. My mind was completely elsewhere. And I realised as I went through a red light that I'd gone through a red light. So I quickly slammed on. Because it was a car's kind of passing in front of me, so I slammed on. But as I did, my thumb stayed on the handlebar in my right hand, but my hand continued to move forward. So I ended up breaking a bone between my thumb and my index finger on my right hand. I didn't realise it at first, maybe because adrenaline was going. Anyway, so I kind of shook it off and rode home. And it was only when I got home, I thought, right, I'm going to have a bath, and then I'll just crack on with my evening. I remember trying to get out of the bath. As you put your hands behind you to kind of lift yourself up. And as I did that, I was like, oh my God, my hand. And that's kind of when I felt it. I don't know why it took so long for the adrenaline to wear off, but it seemed to have done. So I ended up with a pot on for a reasonable amount of time. So that bike didn't get used for a good couple of weeks. So I think the moral of that story is something that I think we've talked about a little bit on this podcast, is just being mindful about when you are riding, what kind of mindset you're in. And that's really important. And another one was also on the moped, but I don't know why. I don't even know why I did it, to be honest. And even like now, looking back, thinking, you bloody idiot. And when we were kids, we used to, when we were riding along and someone got a bit too close behind you on a scooter, because obviously you couldn't just open the throttle up and just disappear. You were kind of a bit hampered on speed. So we used to wobble the bike side to side really rapidly. And it always used to make the car behind you back off. And it was normally because they probably thought, Jesus, this kid's going to fall off and I'm going to run him over. And I have no idea why I did this. But I left my house and I was wearing, I wasn't even wearing full protective gear. I was wearing jeans. And never make that mistake again. Once I've told you this story, I don't think you will either. And I was wearing a waterproof jacket. Luckily, I was wearing a good helmet. And I remember I wiggled the bike. There was no one behind me. I was just being an idiot. And then I pulled the front wheel up to pull a wheelie. But obviously, I hadn't stopped wiggling. So when I pulled the front wheel up, the whole bike just like flipped. And I ended up like flying straight over the handlebars. I landed on my shoulder, on my knee. And then the moped landed on top of me. I didn't slide very much, but I remember hitting my chin on the floor. But luckily I was wearing a full face, so the chin piece on the helmet took that brunt. I remember getting up thinking, bloody hell, my shoulder's killing me. And I had a massive, I literally tore the skin on my knee. I had bits of denim stuck in that wound. And I trashed my helmet, trashed my bike. And I remember just picking that bike up and just leaving it to one side. And I remember going home and I rung my friend, same guy in the previous story was Cranny. I rung him and I was like, look mate, I don't know what the hell I've done. My shoulder's killing me. And lads being lads, he was like, oh, grab your fingers. Can you stick your fingers in that joint? And I was like, oh no, yeah I can. He went, you dislocated your shoulder. I went, fucking hell. He's like, no, it's fine. I'll tell you how to put it in, back in, on the phone. I went, really? And he's like, honestly, it'll go straight back in, you'll be fine. And I don't know why I listened to him. I mean, he went in, he said, put your hands behind your back. So I had to put the landline down. Landline, didn't have a mobile. Landline down. And I could put it on loudspeaker so I could hear him. He said, right, put your hands behind your back and then lift your arms up. Oh, the noise my shoulder made, it just popped and straight back in. And I will hold my hands up. I fell to the floor and cried. I was in so much pain, and all I could hear was this little knobhead laughing on the phone. And I managed to gather myself together. And he goes, right, soft lad, get yourself some paracetamol, go grab your bike and come and meet me at the park. Honestly, absolutely nuts. I don't know why I did that with a bike, and I don't really know why I listened to him. But I mean, in all fairness, it went back in. But yeah, jeans, no. I remember that evening, another bath, trying to pull bits of denim out my knee. Ugh, not pleasant at all. Another bad decision, right? This one, I actually laugh about. Even now, I laugh about. As you do when you pull up to a petrol station, and this might be Marmite for some people, but I'll tell you what I do. What I do is I pull up to a pump, and then I put the side stand down and I stay sat on the bike. I open up the petrol tank, the cap, and I fill up while I'm sat on the bike. Now, the reasons why I do it is that I can actually see down into the petrol tank. So I'm filling up and I can see when it gets to the top. So I filled it up, put the pump back, and at the time there was no pay at pump. I had to go and pay inside. So I put the cat back down, tightened it up, and then I went to go pay inside. However, this day, again, I must have been distracted. So I pulled up to the petrol pump, didn't put the side stand down, filled up, put the pump back, and then went to get off the bike. And as I did, with no side stand down, the bike fell over. Now, that's bad enough on its own. However, it was a GSX-R 600 S-Rad, and it was an old 1998. It was a heavy bike, really heavy bike, and it pinned me between the pump and the bike. And I just remember just being like, the bike's on its side, and I'm kind of wedged between the pump and the bike, thinking, I can't get this damn bike off my leg. And people were just walking past. No one was helping. Absolutely no one. But at the time, I was furious because I've probably damaged my fairings. I've damaged my pride. But I managed to just about lift the bike up to kind of get it off my leg. But yeah, I remember coming home and telling friends, and I remember just laughing at me. So yeah, it put the side stand down, and to be honest, maybe it's easy just to get off the bike, but I don't know. I think old habits. I've got in the habit of doing it now. Crashes. Another one, crashes. Let's have a think of crashes. I have had a few crashes. I've had 1, 2, 3. I've had 3 crashes. A lot of them, 2 of them were when I first moved to big bikes. One was entirely my fault, and then the other one wasn't really my fault. But this one in particular, I don't think it was my fault. I mean, it wasn't deemed as my fault, which is always nice. But at the time, I had a Yamaha R1 in blue. Oh, beautiful bike. And I just finished my dissertation at university, and I had to go and hand the dissertation in. So I thought, you know what? Instead of like jumping in a car or a train to get to Leeds from Bradford, I thought I'll just jump on the bike. It'll be far quicker and far easier. Anyway, so I set off, and I was probably going a bit quick. I'd overtaken a couple of cars, and by that point I kind of got it out of my system. And then I got to a set of traffic lights, and there was a lot of cars all stopped at this traffic lights. So I very slowly filtered past them and got to the front, and then the lights changed and I set off. Now as I set off down the road, I could see a junction, and I was probably doing 20, 30 at the time. I think it was a 30-mile-an-hour road, and I saw a car kind of poking a little bit out of a junction on my left-hand side. So I slowed right down because I wasn't too sure whether this car had seen me. And then I moved the bike to the centre line of the road just to kind of give myself a little bit more breathing space. And I slowly rolled up to this car, and then I gave the throttle a bit of a blip to say, hey, I'm here, and I'm still going. And then I continued and went in front of the car. Now this car hadn't looked, hadn't seen me, and just T-boned me. Now, I ended up, and I don't know to this day how the hell I stayed on it, but the bike kind of like flicked a little bit to the right. I was kind of falling off the bike, but I managed to keep the bike upright, pulled to one side, put the side stand down, and I to be honest, I just walked off. Because I thought, I need to calm down before I start interacting with this individual. And I walked off, and I remember just putting my head on taking my helmet off, taking my gloves off, and just stood next to a wall, just taking a breather. And the woman came over, and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, not. And luckily I'd calmed down. I was like, look, no, not really. Like, what the hell were you doing? Anyway, not going to go into too much detail now, but I ended up going up to have a look at the car and seeing the damage, and spotted it. I was like, yeah, okay, you see where my foot's gone through your bumper, and luckily I was wearing full gear. I didn't break any bones, but I did damage some ligaments in my leg. And yeah, so she was like, oh yeah, that. I said, what about this damage here? And she's like, oh no, that's from a previous accident. And I was like, alarm bell started ringing, so I was taking pictures of everything. And I mean, in all fairness, luckily, my bike wasn't as bad. All it had is a snap foot peg where my boot and foot had kind of gone into the side, and a few scuffs on the fairing. Cutting a very long story short, because I'll probably go into that actually in a bit more detail because in another episode, because I think it's quite interesting for people to be aware of and to know of, so that if they end up in the same position that they can kind of fight back a little bit. So I ended up, it took over a year to resolve, and it almost went to court. And it ended up with them basically saying that I was speeding, Anyway, never happened. I ended up using their witness as my witness, and I ended up getting a full payout, and the bike got sorted, and I ended up then selling the bike. So yeah, there you are. Another crash very early on. Like I said to you before, I used to ride my moped everywhere. My bikes used to be my own form of transport. So even in winter when it was snowing or icy, I'd be out on the moped. And I remember one evening going down this side road, and literally out of absolutely nowhere, the bike just went and flicked. It flipped to the side. I remember sat down on the road with my legs out, with my arms still going, where's the bike? Sliding down the road on black ice. Now, in my youth, I can't say that. Kind of. When I was a bit younger, when I was a lot younger, I was a bit of a mosher. So at the time, I had baggy jeans on and a metal-studded belt. It was the metal-studded belt digging into the tarmac and the ice that slowed me down. But I remember trying to grab my moped because I saw it, make sure it didn't hit any cars as I was sliding down the road. So yeah, black ice, maybe try and avoid it. So I think some other funny stories, probably more around friends if you like. Because I might talk about the crashes in a bit more detail, especially the R1 insurance and bits and pieces, in a bit more detail in another episode, because that might actually be helpful for a few people. But for me, riding with friends is amazing. I love riding with friends. But I mean, I also like riding on my own, but riding with friends is something a bit more special, isn't it? And I remember my friend, who also is no longer with us, he turned up to my house, and he said, "Oh, we're gonna go for a ride still." Yeah, let's go for a ride, man. Let's go for a ride. And I had, what did I have at the time? I think I had an Aprilia RSV Millie on a 2002, beautiful bike, sound like thunder. And he had a Yamaha R1, and he hadn't been riding very long. And we had a bit of a disagreement around him buying the R1, as it was quite a big leap. Anyway, so he turned up to my house. He's like, "Should we go for a ride?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go for a ride." And as I'm like getting my gear on, getting ready, I'm like having a quick look at his bike, thinking, "Oh, beautiful bike that." And I look at his back tyre and it could see canvas. I went, "Mate, we are not going for a ride on that bike with that rear tyre like that. You're just not doing it." And he's like, "Oh, it'll be right. I says, no, it will not be right. Okay, we are going to go for a ride, but we're going to go to the tyre shop first. I'm going to get you a new set of tyres. You are not riding out like that." So we went over to East Yorkshire, heading that way. It wasn't very far. Got him some new tyres. And by the time we'd faffed around, it was only a short ride. So he had new tyres, and I remember laughing at him, going, "Are you ready for this?" And he goes, "What?" I went, "You've never ridden a bike with brand new tyres, have you?" And he's like, "No." I went, "I'm going to give you some advice. Take it bloody steady, because that tyre will feel horrible. New tyres feel horrible as soon as when you initially get them. It takes a good couple of 100 miles to bed them in and get rid of it's like a releasing agent that they put on the tyre to allow it to come out the mould a bit easier. But it makes them feel very slippy and a bit horrible. And I can be a bit cruel sometimes. And I remember in riding, I said, "Look, just take it steady, but it'll feel like you're like Bambi on ice." Anyway, so we went a couple of 100 yards down the road and I pulled over. I was like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Fucking hell, yeah, you're not wrong. It's horrible." I said, "Just give it a bit of time." So we were going, we thought we'll head back home, and near on the east side of Leeds, there's like a load of roundabouts as you're heading towards the M1. And I remember going up to the roundabout and thinking, "Do I be cruel here?" Sod it, let's do it. So I went round the roundabout, and he didn't know where he was going, so he just kept going around the roundabout with me. We did about 2 or 3 runs, and then I went down the road, and you see him just shaking his head going, "You knob." And then we pulled over, and he's like, I knew you were going to do that. So yeah, that's quite funny. And then one that really sticks out, I was riding my moped again with my friend Cranny, and like I said before, it was a proper Jack the Lad. If you knocked him off when we were on the road, I'd seen him in the past. If someone cut him up, even if it was on a little 50cc, he'd ride past and he'd just stick his leg out and just take the wing mirror off. If they'd cut him up or they were being a bit of a tool with him, he wouldn't think twice about taking the wing mirror off. And I remember he was following me and he was egging me on to go quicker. And we had a nice little downhill, and I thought, I can get past this car here. So, as you do, you tuck yourself in and you put your head near the clocks, and I wound it right open. You can just hear, and I overtook this car, and then I remember getting home just down the road, and he's like, "You silly twat." And I went, "What have I done?" He went, "You just overtook an undercover cop car." And I'm like, "Oh, no." And I just remember him just sitting in the kitchen, absolutely wetting himself. He's like, "They're going to be knocking on the door in a minute." They didn't. They must have. He was either winding me up, or they must have the coppers must have seen the funny side. I don't know, but yeah. Oh, always funny. Always funny. And I think, just to kind of reflect on this is why I love riding motorbikes. I love them because they give you memories and they give you experiences. When you ride or drive your car and you go to Tesco's or you go to Asda, or let's say you drive into Leeds or you drive into a local city, you sit in your car, your nice little cage, heated seats, and you put something on you listen to some radio, and you get there, you pull up, do your jobs, come back out, and you go home. It's never the same when you ride a motorbike. It never is. It's the kind of preparation of putting the gear on, the kind of mental state that you inevitably get yourself into before you even ride the bike. And then you're riding somewhere with a nice clear mind. And then you get there, and 9 times out of 10 you're pulling up and you're parking next to other bikes, which then means that you're interacting with other bikers, you're talking, you're having a chat. Sometimes I've done it in the past where I turn up to a place like that and I end up sitting down and having a coffee with someone and just talking for a good 20-30 minutes. And inevitably it always ends up talking about stories from bikes, the actual bikes themselves, friends that have been and gone, some of the rides that they've been on, some of the places they've been, some of the best roads to ride. And you don't get that in driving a car or catching a bus. And that's what I love about riding bikes. It's not just a form of transport, it is a real way of life, and I absolutely love it. Look, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. I've got a very interesting one next week. I'm interviewing a lovely lady who has just released a book on mindfulness and around motorbikes. I look forward to interviewing her, and I'm looking forward to giving you all that episode so you can listen to her and some of the very insightful things that she's bringing to the motorbike world as a fellow rider as well. So looking forward to that. Anyway, take it easy everyone, keep it shiny side up, and see you next time.